Have you heard about Israeli spies arrested on 9/11? Dirty cops hired to commit murders and bombings by the ADL? What do you know about the Pollard spy case and the network that not only got away with it but still dominates the neocons? There is a creeping push to destroy the Bill of Rights, to enshrine the false flag war profiteers behind the political donor class, and give the Epstein co-conspirators the ability to go after the journalists investigating their years of treason, funding proxy terror, and betraying the Constitution. As we see free speech attacked by Zionist monopolies in tech and news media. Trump and his soulless fake Christian shills are coaching the military to kill civilians in service to AIPAC gangsters and Wall Street billionaires who still manage the accounts Epstein was funneling dirty money into. We see the massive crimes of the Annenberg Foundation stealing money for wildfire victims directly to Israeli front charities. We see the Adelson Murder Inc. crime family pimping Trump like missing children from the Mexican border in DHS custody. Erica Kirk and her ties to Epstein, Trump, DynCorp, child slavery, and CIA networks that hide behind fake charities. This is a mixture of evil from Silicon Valley and Europe to the slums where civilians are disappearing connected to Mid-East yacht parties and Israeli organ harvesting. First, receipts. Have you read Whitney Webb, Peter Dale Scott, William Blum, Jim Mars, Max Blumenthal, Miko Peled, Norman Finkelstein, Chris Hedges, or followed Abby Martin, Lee Camp, Brianna Joy Gray, Katie Halper, Candace Owens, Sabby Sabs, or Ian Carroll? Makes you wish Ron Paul or Cynthia McKinney was more of a threat in 2008. In 1992-93, the Anti-Defamation League's San Francisco office was raided. This was connected to Roy Bollock and Tom Girard, a former dirty cop and CIA agent who was suspected of backdooring for Mossad. This is outlined in the Kings of Garbage article and the video Biggest Spy Scandal in USA History by Psych History Show YouTube page. Police and FBI found thousands of files on US citizens, students, and even pro-peace Jewish groups. Gang-stalked, infiltrated, and spied on behalf of Israel and South Africa to gather info on anti-apartheid and peace activists pro-Palestine groups, even teachers' unions to be spied on and, in many cases, framed. The murder of Alex O'Day, an American Christian peace activist targeted by the JDL in a bombing. This ties in directly with settler price tag attacks, as the suspects in Odeh's murder were followers of Mir Kahane and fled to settlements involved in the 2014 murder of baby Ali Dawabshe, burned alive in the Duma infanticide arson with his mother and brother as they slept, in a firebombing by Jewish rich kids living the KKK dream in the West Bank. Pressure from DC seems to aid these Israeli spy rings. It seems as if our Federal Reserve and Zionist monopolies in media are the very thing enabling rape, murder, torture, and subversion of our society. Remember Jonathan Pollard, a Navy analyst who pled guilty in 1987 to spying for Israel, now a favorite token racist on Fox News to promote anti-constitutional Zionist talking points, settler propaganda, and encourages Jewish kids to go to Israel to train as spies. Pollard was involved in the largest number of murders of American agents in the history of the United States, as his spy information was handed over to the Soviets. As Zionist assets in media try to present Israel and its values in line with America's, this shows that was never the case, and Israel's spies will play both sides of every conflict. The ADL training of American cops on hiding signs of torture and organ harvest on bodies of those killed in custody should outline how foreign spies are directly training our police to violate the Constitution and international human rights law. How can this also hide future spies inside the highest levels of law enforcement? Attempts to normalize unrestricted access to our police and military by foreign assets is alarming. The mentality of the world's worst human rights abusers embedding their agents into media and campaign finance further shows how the Zionist death cult has its bloody hoofprints at the highest levels of war profiteering in this country. Remember the murder of the son of federal judge Esther Salas, as she was appointed to Deutsche Bank case linked to Epstein. It's always Mossad, except when it could lead to mass tar and feathering of IDF assets on USA soil. It seems the Jewish mafia has its own government now. Judge Salas targeted to stay in line with Zionist cover-up. Suspect Roy Den Holland had ties to Kroll Associates, a private spy ring. Kroll provided security in WTC buildings during 9/11, along with Black Cube kept tabs on and intimidated Harvey Weinstein's rape victims. The list of other intelligence cutouts of IDF spies on USA soil is extensive. If you want to see why the government shutdown and Trump's attempted cover-up of Epstein ring information seems contrary to years of QAnon and MAGA calls for race war and insurrection, seems that small government and transparency doesn't apply to Jewish mafia guys with Saudi passports who share kiddie porn with royals, members of the American government, Israeli spies, and Fortune 500 CEOs. Definitely don't look up The Memory Hole 2. Trump Jane Doe rape paperwork if you want to worship the human toilet in chief. Have you noticed how COVID was the cover to censor thousands of videos and articles critical of war crimes? Look into Corbett Report, Christopher Ballin, Lee Camp, and Abby Martin History of Deplatforming. Looks like the Biden regime really were useful to laying the groundwork for the October 7th psyop to turn Gaza into a Syrian pipeline oil depot for Israel to replace Nord Stream to Europe with stolen conflict oil. Genie Energy links Dick Cheney, Rothschild family, and ISIS blood oil smuggled into Israel. Washington's hawkish network in the 80s and 90s that went on to promote the endless cash grab of the War on Terror was also linked to massive censorship of satanic ritual abuse in the Reagan White House. A documentary, Conspiracy of Silence, was bought by unnamed billionaires to hide the Christian pro-Israel crowd traffic. Little boys linked to CIA child abuse, cult. The Finders. This was tied to murder of investigator Gary Corridori and his son when the FBI bombed their plane and stole his findings. Post 9/11, neocon strategists like Richard Pearl show up in the timeline, one of the most dirty Israeli spies linked to false flags, child molestation, war profiteers, and other tenets of the Zionist world domination program of Rothschild bankers and Wall Street shit fetishists in service to installing Israeli toilet cameras in schools by ghouls like Aaron Cohen, Barry Weiss, and David Ellison Cabal. If we were ruled by vampires, tapeworm brain parasites, or psychic leeches practicing Third Temple blood rituals against children, would it be any different? The occultists at the center of Israeli spy control of America already openly practice Lesser Key of Solomon demonology, Bohemian Grove Zionist child murder network, Frazzle Drip on the neoliberal side, Franklin Trust on the neocon side. Look up 1933 Chicago Soldier Field Moloch ceremony by the Jewish Agency for Palestine, and find the owls and demons on Federal Reserve notes linked to Epstein Shore Temple. MK Ultra Mind Control exposed by Cleve Ahava in Behold the Gates of Dawn, or the elite black magic network exposed in Dark Side of Zion, or timeline editing in Isthmus of Endlessness. The world is under a dark cloak of devil worship as everything we know is backwards. Jehovah is a devil. Israelis are demons. Child abusers edit what we can say or study about them. This is not new. Look up the Heshronat Hashaz, censored Talmud and secret Bush-era Noahide laws that shelter the parasite-class elites from American law. Look into the history of Netanyahu family and the horrid crimes of the Rothschild dirty money terror networks that murdered 80% of Palestinian Christians since 1948. Look at the Eastern European money that founded Hollywood to brainwash the world. Look at pushes for media consolidation to actual Israeli government and CIA contractors to openly dominate kids' programming from Nickelodeon, MTV, CBS, and HBO. These cowardly inbred pedophiles want your kids to die in Iran, Ukraine, China, Russia. They don't care as long as their kids can be cruising for twinks in South Florida, Thailand, Cambodia, Colombia, Philippines, Puerto Rico. Economies kept depressed so beady-eyed and pigeon-toed images of God like Naftali Bennett, Ehud Barak, Ben Gvir can buy up children for cheap. Expansive surveillance programs to protect these genetic deformities with Zionist brain rot, herpes, and cultural syphilis can make sure kids in bathroom stalls aren't inciting riots, viewing hurtful anti-Semitic content, or sharing unconfirmed reports unverified by Wikipedia. Zuck and Google's team of Shin Bet and Mossad spooks who come here explicitly to censor their own child abuse in the IDF torture chambers. Millions of non-Jews kept in generational prison camps. So swishy IDF spies can live the jet-set life. Good news is you don't even have to be Jewish to enjoy the joys of state prostitution, spy ring hookups, and rooftop genocide parties in Tel Aviv. Tarantino, who drugs UCLA film interns and had to flee to Israel when Nick Bryant outed him as a pedophile. Now he gets to be Jewish, and they even paid an asset to marry him. Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail adds another series of layers to the Talmudic predator iceberg. Navy SEAL Jeffrey Epstein and other NSA spiders in tech and Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein is another good example of burned assets. You know when their network was too compromised to function. The FBI and CIA went from protecting these slime with intimidating victims into silence to project cover-up. The Mega Group, a roster of mega donors and power brokers. Heads of major brands like Victoria's Secret, Banana Republic, Gap, Hollister, Pornhub. OnlyFans using intelligence cutouts in modeling agencies to directly funnel teenagers to the Mid-East to be sodomized by heads of state and celebrities as perks of the defeat of international law on display with underage sex, drinking, and drug use on Birthright Israel aka Taglit, which means discovery, allegedly leveraging intelligence ties with high-paying jobs as shills, snitches, and influencers to spread steeds for the IDF as a tour guide. Giving massages to high school girls who just want to fall in love with the professional revenge porn guide to all of Jerusalem's holy sites. You can dance all night and don't even have to wire the towers with nanothermite while posing as an art student. Compromat is one word for how this works. Let's learn from Hebrew, shall we? A commonly used term to describe the concept of gathering damaging information is dahak, which refers to blackmail material or compromising information. Another term, meida maflil, also describes compromising or incriminating information. A kosher slaughterer is called a shoshet, a specially trained killer who performs the ritual slaughter, like those stolen Yemenite babies, raised by Mossad to speak Arabic with radical and murderous Zionist settler worldview, who grew up to be ISIS throat-slitters in the Greater Israel Project in Syria. Sayanim, that translates to snitches or informants. It refers to a network of Zionist spies who reportedly provide logistical support to the Mossad, front businesses, arms dealers, child traffickers. Like, every member of media and government who went to Israel to kiss the wall and take classes on how to serve the Jewish mafia outside Shetrail. Let's learn some words for disinformation since we can be honest with the Goyim slaves, aka cattle, who are only good for sex abuse, to pay taxes and organ donation. To lie in Hebrew, sheker, or kazav, falsehood, but with a different nuance than sheker. It can mean a lie that disappoints or fails to live up to its promise, like Judeo-Christian values, and Google searches on Talmud redirecting to Israel government-curated disinformation synagogues. Takbula, cunning, stratagem, or ruse. This is a common, modern Hebrew term for subterfuge. It implies a clever or strategic deception to achieve a goal like double charging people you hate, like Christians and Muslims. Mirma, deceit, fraud, or treachery. This term appears often in the Bible and refers to a deeper, more intentional act of deception. It is a strong word that goes beyond a simple lie and implies a hidden trap or scheme. Ramaya mean slackness or negligence, like selling a salvage title car with fractures on the frame for full blue book. A little pressure washing on the engine, a little new car smell, and you are on your way to the axle cracking on your cross-country road trip, or buying a condo with black mold and termites in a fabricated inspection. Let's talk about our favorite candidates for tear and feathering. The pedophile oligarch creeps at Palantir, co-founded by Alex Karp with early backing from Peter Thiel, using networks like Canary Mission and Middle East Forum Campus Watch to harass, gangstalk, and assault critics of organ harvest and sex abuse against Palestinian child prisoners. These networks directly link to Trump's immigration raids that normalize secret police, checkpoints, unwarranted roundups of anyone for thought crimes like posting something on Facebook, X, or YouTube. Like Israel, you have people being separated from their kids and loved ones for free speech. Meanwhile, the major proponents of this Bari Weiss just sold the free press to CBS for billions after being best known for pushing for the lynching, or Rafat Al-Alir, an award-winning poet who was first to question the October 7 grift. Public health is also used to spy on you by big insurance and anyone willing to pay these CIA and Mossad creeps for your info, like the Russian and Ukrainian mafia, Israeli human traffickers in porn or organ, harvesting synagogues, scouring bank records for people who might sell unwanted children to Zionist networks with diplomatic immunity. On a side note, do you remember when Netanyahu's therapist was suicided for saying on the phone the Grand Wizard of Israel was a dangerous psychopath who wanted to doom the world into the most backwards and vile, narcissistic, alarmist doom to profit a sickly investor class that thrives only in conditions of monopolies, doublespeak, mind control, and censorship? Moshe Yatum said, "I can't take it anymore," wrote Yatum. "Robbery is redemption. Apartheid is freedom. Peace activists are terrorists. Murder is self-defense. Piracy is legality. Palestinians are Jordanians. Annexation is liberation. There's no end to his contradictions." Freud promised rationality would reign in the instinctual passions, but he never met Bibi Netanyahu. This guy would say, "Gandhi invented brass knuckles." Yatum was apparently stunned at what he called the waterfall of lies gushing from his most illustrious patient. His personal diary details the steady disintegration of his once invincible personality under the barrage of self-serving rationalizations put forth by Netanyahu. He eventually suffered a series of strokes when attempting to grasp Netanyahu's thinking, which he characterized in one diary entry as a black hole of self-contradiction. The first of Yatum's strokes occurred when Netanyahu offered his opinion that the 9/11 attacks on Washington and New York were good. The second followed a session in which Netanyahu insisted that Iran and Nazi Germany were identical. And the third occurred after the Prime Minister declared Iran's nuclear energy program was a flying gas chamber, and the Jews are on the verge of annihilation at the hands of the racist Goyim, and the only way to save the day is to carry out one final massacre. Sounds like Netanyahu had his psychotherapist killed for ringing alarm about some horrifying false flag on the horizon. This leads to Zio asset Laura Loomer, who looks like an HIV-positive shark with a yeast infection in its sinuses, who calls for the mass murder of Latinos, blacks, and Arabs to satisfy her Talmudist blood cult murder, lust for police state, concentration camps, and feeding babies to alligators. We need to take a look at private prison lobbyist appointed Attorney General Pam Bondi, defunding the Oversight Committee that investigates Foreign Agency Registration Act applications. The only possibility behind this move is to protect spy rings in the United States, like when Israeli spy Chertoff ran cover for 9/11 cover-up while running Bush to DOJ. It looks like we are in for something far more sinister. Another Trump henchman, Pete Hegseth, is drastically removing oversight of the military and the Department of War, promoting crimes against Americans by the police state, and an aggressive stance on ending the Geneva Convention protections on targeted individuals. Pushing to create an occupation army of our cities and treating the American people as enemies within. These are crimes against the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These are the acts outlined in the Declaration of Independence as foundation for revolution. These criminals are overtly serving the Israeli political death cult in not just an advance towards World War III for AIPAC, but also creating the conditions for a mass murder of anyone critical of the regime, like journalists, activists, organizers, and freedom of speech advocates. We must be vigilant that the crimes of the fascist police state, war profiteers, and foreign asset bad actors are not turned against the American people as the motto goes, blame others for that which you are guilty. The actions of the Trump regime are to protect the Epstein predator class lobbyists, hedge fund managers, and war hawks of the Israel lobby. False flags by the Zionist insect are their bread and butter. We must be alert that the cash cow of the Israeli political mafia, political murder, is not allowed to dash us into World War III. There is speculation. Even Trump is not beyond the threat of the Ashkenazi gangsters who have one of their own in the VP office, Jade Vance. Real name is James Donald Bowman, and he is a protege of Antichrist super creep Peter Thiel. The rise of ICE, DHS, and other abusive federal agencies to spy on phones, break into homes, set up checkpoints, and violate all our Bill of Rights laws is enabled by Israeli Pegasus spyware that enables secret police to violate your most basic privacy without warrant or court order. This enables the regime to function as thought police for their true objective, to protect the Epstein predatory class in Wall Street from the public. Together with Penlink, Paragon Solutions, Palantir, and Pegasus, tools used in the past to crush dissent in Hong Kong, Mexico, and Israel, countries known for disappearing students, punitive organ harvest and torture based on social media posts. This gives the regime and its AIPAC masters ability to target more and more Americans under guise of immigration. Crackdowns. But the goal is clear: to protect the criminal regime as they expand their unpopular wars and refuse to relinquish power to keep Trump and Netanyahu out of prison upon end of term. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, forcing a government shutdown to stifle the Thomas Massie vote to release the Epstein files. Johnson has been caught using suspicious porn and gay dating apps with his son. The likelihood he is being pressured by Israel to protect its donor class, linked to pro-Israel billionaire co-conspirators of the Epstein ring and AIPAC, is very high. There is a serious threat these evil factions want to stage a false flag or fake revolutionary event to impose martial law, round up anyone talking about this, and impose a free speech ban around keywords linked to Epstein, Israel, and Netanyahu. This is emboldened by the monopoly buyout by the Ellison cabal with ties to CIA and IDF censorship to install ghoulish super creep Barry Weiss as the head of CBS, creating a massive pro-Israel echo chamber at one of America's oldest news networks. Not that these media monopolies haven't lied us into Israel wars for decades, but now they take their orders directly from the Netanyahu regime and oligarch tech Stasi in the CIA. The threat of mind control projects by Zionist monopolies in our media is a serious threat. If you look back to the MK Ultra program and theorists around the Red Manchurian Candidate film, comes from the admission of war crimes by Korean war pilots who admitted to dropping herbicides and pathogens on farms. William Blum exposed similar crimes against Cuba, Vietnam, and Central America. With IDF war criminals becoming unhappy with the war and their own part in it, we will see a massive push to demonize the specific soldiers involved in massacres instead of the chain of command that created the climate for burying alive civilian doctors and nurses, bombing schools for decades, and setting up proxy terror networks, including Hamas, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda in Syria. This is a threat internationally, as these Western-backed jihadis are still moving around on Israel's behalf, as we saw with their attacks in France 10 years ago. With Project 2025, Jade Helm, Agenda 21, we have seen the most insane predictions of Alex Jones, David Icke, William Blum, and Bill Cooper usher us into a world of censorship, corporate war on the poor, police state, healthcare weaponized, and government surveillance by the most guilty against whistleblowers. Now, as the Project 2030 is on the horizon, how will our farmers and urban communities fare against capitalism adopting the Big Brother total control model? Now, on the anniversary of October 7th, the Synagogue of Sodomy is nearing plans for ethnic cleansing in Gaza to enable the plot to smuggle ISIS and Al-Qaeda blood oil to Europe, exploit Gaza's massive offshore natural gas field, and all this is facilitated by Dick Cheney's Genie Energy. The rise of settler crimes against the oldest Christian communities shows there is no line the IDF and Kahanist groups who want to create a Jewish version of the KKK to rule Gaza aside from the IDF. This is a double threat as Netanyahu regime has officially adopted ISIS-linked gangs to steal aid and US-linked white supremacist biker gangs to front as CIA cutouts to create kill zones at aid distribution sites. This is the true plan behind the demonization of UN schools and charities. To use proxies to murder the Palestinians for the Likud party. This evil policy is not new, and the abuse of Mid-East communities by the Talmudists has been denied for years until their vile agenda is complete. There is a deeper layer to attacks on Christians. Pam Bondi removing the DOJ monitors of FARA applications hides the targeting of American Christians for a joint propaganda. GPS tracking and malware in geofencing technology, like what Israeli spies had planted around the Washington, D.C. Those endless pro-Israel ads will creep from YouTube into your phone's core metadata to harass the church with subjugation and subterfuge brainwashing against the complicit and far more troubling efforts against those starting to Google questions frowned on by Israeli spies on U.S. soil. We also need to watch for Israeli government-connected synagogues selling stolen land in private racist sales. It has been reported that Jewish protest groups have exposed these sales in New Jersey and New York synagogues, but the likelihood they are happening in Florida, California, Arizona, and other major centers of Zionist wealth is 100%. This is on par with trading Indians' gold for beads or paying for scalps. This global hate network of Zionism has veiled disguises like a Maccabi Tel Aviv soccer team, JDL-coded stickers and Hebrew language stickers on rear windows of cars that read messages that encourage Third Temple violence, or JDL slogans to normalize these groups that call for disarming Americans, to stockpile weapons, and create clandestine Jewish terror cells in communities around the USA. The JDL was started by Mir Kahane with Mossad backing to terrorize blacks, calling for the reparations payments from synagogues directly involved in slavery while adopting the Black Power fist and Panther iconography, while being more in line with Contra-Death Squads, the KKK, and proto-Nazi groups like the Brown Shirts and SA of the 1930s. Trump raising the fist of revolution is comical, as the only protesting he has ever done is against fair pay, unions, and worker protections as a slumlord and mafia-linked developer. Let's look at DynCorp. One of the unforgivable crimes about Senator Cynthia McKinney was grilling Donald in the House of Representatives about a child sex abuse slavery scandal by a CIA contractor firm in Eastern Europe. This is the same region Erica Kirk was running the Romanian Angels charity that was accused of wrongdoing and missing kids. We have to wonder where these kids are, sold to the Northern Alliance or friendly Arab nations for CIA favors, to be carved up as cattle for organ harvest by Israeli government-linked synagogues, caught trafficking bodies of missing and maimed people who were never part of the media reports or official party line of the New World Order crime ring. What do you know about the vile idea of Malthusian economics and the techies out to kill your family in artificial starvation measures to maintain their power? London and CIA bankers, Wall Street and Tel Aviv all working to balkanize America and install corporate feudalism, extreme austerity, and stormtroopers micromanaging what we think and say. We must examine the vast CIA backdoors into tech, Wall Street, banks, and the shadow world of terror funding and destabilization before these plans for the world by criminals inciting atrocities doom us all under the most crushing tyranny. Toxic restrictions on the very core of human expressions of what it means to learn and love and grow for the next generations who could live in slavery and die in a post-apocalyptic hellscape engineered to keep human suffering going as an economic engine of control. I am not trying to stack the deck against the Jews, the British, the bankers, or the techies. Rather, I want to try to organize a resistance of the spirit against the computerized structures that lie just outside the vision of most, while the vultures circle child who don't know they were born into suffering, so that the parasite class at the top can stand on mountain of bones, needed to prop up vast wealth and injustice. The world as we know it is vanishing. The old world of culture, humanity, art, and songs of generations past under the false narrative of this destructive progress of modernism, global producidon and unelected councils of wolves, hostile to any free expression of joy or contemplative thought that goes against the machine. We cannot allow mechanized kill lists, a net of killer drones overhead, to instill terror of speaking up or stepping out of line of the giant invisible slaughterhouse for the soul our false capitalist nightmare has become. Invented billionaires to play roles beneficial to the police state, while true artists and thinkers are ground in the gears of wage slavery, inflation, housing collapse, and record corporate profits in a system that socializes losses and conceals profits. We see the false prophets of tech pushing a sadistic scripture they can blame on AI when it goes wrong, or prop up some vampire-class oligarch to take credit for the temporary wins in the brutalist dystopia that feeds on the lives of our children. Imagine growing up in Africa, the Balkans, Mexico, or any point in the global south where being sold to some billionaire tech slime by your mother to anonymous porn content seems like a win for the family. This predatory system is just one facet of an old game of destabilization, coups and sabotaged markets to ensure half the world is always vulnerable to attack. Capitalism is not inherently wrong, but our system of money invented out of thin air and debt carved in stone is worth nothing. And yet we fight endless wars to prop up the petrodollar, world banks, predatory mining, and even restricting water to offshore multinationals with no loyalty to the communities that will die without their rivers, lakes, and aquifers. Corporate builders making useless trash that can't be fixed, so you have to come back to them to buy a new model instead of fixing the old. Look at old cars. Their intrinsic value of metal, wood, rubber, and wires is replaced by fiberglass, composite, and collapsible designs to maximize profits and minimize risk of cheap trash made by the lowest bidder with slave labor. The entire system is set up to take all the value out of products to maximize shareholder and executive salaries while keeping the skilled laborers near starvation, so they have to work 2 or 3 jobs to not live in a car or tent. If these aren't conditions to defend ourselves against the predator class, what is? Do we wait for them to come take our babies like the Yemenite baby affair, or hundreds of thousands of missing Mexican children? Should we wait for the rich to decide to start eating us, or sell our bodies into an abyss of the missing and exploited? This void of humanity in corporations and government will never decide to walk back the freedoms they have taken. If it works well to pound your community into dust with suspicious fires, a real estate or tech bubble, or drawing out of new technology to make 90% of jobs obsolete, some slick-talking maniac like Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, or Alex Karp will start saying, "What makes you special enough to live? Why should you and your people survive?" This is already the reality down in the destabilization zones of Mexico, Syria, much of Africa, and Eastern Europe. Why shouldn't they not start eating you alive if you won't protest? If you won't stop ravenous wolves from picking off the poor, the sick, the elderly, the blue-collar, or just neighborhoods in the way of progress? Real systems with civil liberties implications are just the surface level of radical changes to the nature of reality. Communities wiped out like gold rush boom towns that sit broken by wind and rain and sun, leaning shanties or majestic urban decay. The only memorial to lives snuffed out like Malay and Gaza under the boot of big oil or colonial projects that turn their gun sights on the post-war American dream. Donor ecosystems, Zionist ecosystem of predation is just one corner of the burning world. Megagroup sourcing suggests influence operations blending philanthropy, media, intel cutouts, vast sums of dirty money and political intrigue to keep the sour dance of death in Wall Street going. Cayman Islands, Panama, British Virgin Islands, Switzerland, and Bahamas, havens of the weaponized money stolen from the taxpayers, Rumsfeld's missing trillions, warnings of breakaway civilization. Just make up on the pig of elite money laundering the food stolen from children's mouths. Like the Native Americans, left abandoned on reservations they can only keep as long as they allow strip mining for gold, silver, cobalt, uranium, oil, or sign over their water rights to fracking. And in return, they get the cultural rot of casinos and missing girls traded like glass beads to conquistadors, loading up barrels of gold for Spain. The legitimacy of the world's governments is not in laws, trade deals, contracts, or treaties, but in how they honor life of the creatures of the earth. Think about our entire animal testing market. It's okay because rabbits and dogs don't have posable thumbs and never invented nuclear weapons, so it's okay to skin them alive, inject them with pathogens, or euthanize them by millions when a project closes down. The through line isn't an antichrist faction, or some secret cult of evil sadists in catacombs. This is the nature of the world going back to the Bible and Talmud. Some forms of life are valued less because of a perverse worldview of predator and prey. How do you know in the eyes of the ultimate predator that your family isn't the prey? Because the TV tells you to believe in the honor and integrity of the state? Like Cheney and Rumsfeld said, "We don't torture because we are the United States." Despite seeing naked piles of detainees being charged by biting dogs, kept in a state of elevated heart rate, lack of sleep and panic, waterboarding, electroshocks, or threats of rape and torture of family members. This is just what's admitted. Saying nothing of the revelations of William Blum on the Western atrocities during the Cold War or modern atrocities seen in Gaza. It's easier to censor the information than to stop the machine that profits from criminalizing the existence of Arabs near oil, Mayan tribes near valuable farmland, or uncontacted tribes in the Amazon who need to fight in court for their homes. And when they win, some sleazy US government-backed corporation just burns down the Amazon anyway. His is progress. This is developing markets and captive populations eager to trade life for porn and phones. All the while, we think of corporate strategies as a jungle, and we are the lions. But are we really? Or just mind control slaves who root for any narrative and invented enemy the wise men on TV tell us to hate? If you care about freedom, push for guardrails, sunlight, oversight, antitrust, and anti-monopoly laws to draw back the bowstring aimed at future generations. There is more to life than being raised for meat or sex slaves. We can't continue forward with Old Testament ideas that devalue most lives and prop up a cabal of the select to rule over the slaves and puppets of the dying regime that will metastasize into a raging belligerent cancer that would envelop the world in endless militarism, surveillance, and predictable wars on a schedule to monetize death and bloodshed. Is the world better off ruled by tech overlords who believe in artificial scarcity to impose a 40-hour work week on the huddle and tired masses abandoned by the American dream? When we hear oligarchs talking about wanting to wipe out 2/3 of humanity, what does this show us about the value of their lives? Should Bill Gates and Peter Thiel kick off the race to eradicate humanity by turning guns on their own families? Or is sterilization, depleted uranium, white phosphorus, and microplastics in the water just for the rest of us? Is it bad to say that maybe the world would be better off without this predator class of billionaires who call for mass murder and controlling narratives? Are the Zionists certain that saying political disagreements open the door a mass killing when so many Americans disagrees with them? We need hard limits on surveillance, censorship, and war profiteering. A world where mass slaughter is decided in boardrooms of Halliburton, Kellogg Browning Root, Booz Allen Hamilton, or Shell Oil seems acceptable on any level. Shows the criminal policies we have allowed to run away from us. We need to remember the warnings of Truman, Eisenhower, JFK, and John Lennon on a world attacking what it means to be alive under the ever-encroaching structures of death and sickness that veils itself behind government and charities. If these billionaire war hawks make continued peace as such a Faustian bargain, then what does that say for a culture that wants us to believe that anonymous gunshots, private armies, rigged markets, and dying children are the price of progress? We must ask ourselves if the price of change is being broken on the cross for speaking out, speaking up, or questioning the system as it stands. Then is the world a better place without these scumbags of the elite being whipped to death and nailed to crosses in our place? How can we read the WikiLeaks, Snowden revelations, speeches of the Eugenicists, or hearing about the ghoulish predictions of post-9/11 policy papers and not think that a profound evil is at work behind the scenes, and maybe this predator class of digital nomads is exactly who should pay the cost? Palantir's government contracts, or Pegasus, or any other abusive system, is just beating a dead horse in a world broken by such vast wealth inequality where National Geographic photographers literally watch a vulture's crawl on the exposed ribs of dying child so we can face shock while reading about starvation and plague in the developing world from golf courses and hot tubs. Look into Whitney Webb's citations, into the work of Catherine Austin Fitts. Then decide what the story really is. For more info, look into the following authors and books. Dark Side of Zion, Behold the Gates of Dawn. Isthmus of Endlessness, by Cleve Ahava, for the fictionalized take on our cannibal state and the esoteric. For more grounded and non-fiction, see The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, by Ilan Pappé. Gaza, An Inquest into Its Martyrdom, by Norman Finkelstein, The General's Son. Journey of an Israeli in Palestine, by Miko Peled. The Punishment of Gaza, by Gideon Levy. On Palestine, by Noam Chomsky and Ilan Pappé. The 100 Years' War on Palestine, by Rashid Khalidi. The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, by John Mearsheimer. The Palestine Laboratory by Anthony Lowenstein. The Question of Palestine by Edward Sayed. The Racket, a rogue reporter versus the American Empire by Matthew Kennard. Daybreak in Gaza, Stories of Palestinian Lives and Culture by Mahmoud Muna and Matthew Teller. One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Elise Webb. Weaponizing Anti-Semitism by Asa Winstanley. Genocide in Gaza, Israel, Hamas, and the Long War on Palestine by Avi Shlaim.